Thank you, Jesse. Next, we are joined by Rayid Ghani, a professor of machine learning and public policy at Carnegie Mellon University. He works with government agencies and nonprofits on designing and evaluating AI systems to take on policy problems as well as on AI governance.
Thank you, Ella. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Okay. Next slide, just go jump into this. So as we've kind of the three things I want to sort of quickly talk about in 5 minutes, right? One is what's different, which we've kind of several people touched on given the use of AI in creation of information. What's not different? How is life the same for people doing voter protection? And what can we do about it? So what's different, next slide, is, as Jesse was talking about, right, that there are two big things that are different. Creation of misinformation is cheaper, easier, faster, and most importantly, better. Things are much more believable now than it just took longer before. The example that we hear about, right, the New Hampshire Biden robocall, that a random person, an average person, was able to do in a few minutes with pretty much zero cost. And it was believable. The second piece, which gets less focus on, but is, I think, almost more important, is the dissemination of this information. It's also better, easier, cheaper, faster to target people, to find the pockets they're in and try to get to them in a much more personalized way. All the micro-targeting work that, campaigns do, it's the same thing, and it's just much easier to do at scale. And so on the left here, just some, that's it's the flip side of what Jesse was showing. Jesse was showing what was seen. This is showing what prompt was used to generate those types of images. And this is all it takes, right? We're all familiar with all of this. So what can we, what's sort of not so different, right? Well, unfortunately, what's not so different is detecting these things is still difficult. So where AI can help is in monitoring what's going on. We can monitor all the different social media channels, do the usual listening thing that we do at scale, and see what's going on, what's being distributed, what's being transmitted, who's looking at what. What AI is really, really, really bad at right now is in detecting misinformation. Given a piece of text or an image or a piece of audio or a piece of video, asking AI to tell us this is real versus fake is not really a feasible way to do it. So this is one example. This image, this is one of the tools that you can use to do detection. There's a bunch of these tools, just like there are a bunch of tools to generate fake content. There are also a bunch of tools to detect it. And it turns out when you generate content from a tool and then put it into the similar tool that's supposed to detect it, it doesn't detect it. So the example here is the top image is you put it into this tool and it says it's generated AI, definitely. You crop it, you zoom into the bottom right, and you give it that image and say, oh no, this is perfectly fine. And this is not an exception. Same is true of, when you go back to the most used example, the Biden robocall in New Hampshire. Most of the tools sort of said that's a real audio. And the hard thing is people also find it hard to detect these things. And so we don't really have good human or technology to really detect these things, which kind of brings us to the life has always been. Detecting it is hard. And so you can't really have a shortcut around it. So what can we do, right? Next slide. Pretty much what you've always done. Try to get people the right information. Try to make sure that everything is verifiable, or be a critical consumer information that seems suspicious. Point to reliable sources. Get people to kind of search for the image on Google. Do a reverse image search to see where is it being used other places. Now, there are some telltale signs, mostly in images, not in audio, but in images. These tools are kind of bad at details. And so sometimes you're going to see people with 4 fingers or 6 fingers. Sometimes the face is going to have weird quirks, but that requires, the public to kind of zoom in and look for these things. But I think as people involved in voter protection, you'll sort of start noticing as you look at some of these images, telltale signs. And I think the best way to do that is to start generating them yourself. Play around with these tools, ask it to generate things, and you'll see it has these weird quirks. Faces that are a little weird sometimes, shadows, reflections, things like that. So there are a bunch of telltale signs that are there, but not always, which means we kind of have to come back to the content. Does the content seem real? If not, check for things. And so I think this is kind of the piece that's hopefully not satisfying to anybody here. Ideally we would have really easy ways to detect. And so there are people kind of talking about solutions. One of them is watermarking. The problem with watermarking is that it's not a solution because a lot of these tools are open source. It's very easy to create these tools. If you didn't use the big OpenAI or DALL-E or Microsoft tools, there are one of the most common ones is called deep it's DC deep something DCLU, and it's open source. And so one of the big platforms, GitHub, where open source tools live, they banned it. So what do these people do? Just put it somewhere else, right? So there's always going to be a way to get around watermarking, which means we can't rely on watermarking. We can't rely on AI tools detecting deep fakes or synthetic audio or images. And so eventually it's going to come down to us as kind of critical consumers to verify information, to check for sources, to ask people where it's coming from. Does it look suspicious? Does it seem suspicious? And so that's where we're kind of back to where we've always been, just dealing with a lot more content. So it's making life harder, but that's kind of where we are today. Next slide. There's a couple of sources here for more information if you want to take a look at this. Yeah, thanks.